This is exactly how the future starts looking real in Montreal, as recently signed to his ELC, Vinzenz Rohrer has officially hit the ice here in Montreal, practicing with the other guys. A guy that is NHL or bust this season, or else he'll go back to Europe. He is one of the guys ready to make some noise, but the future doesn't end just there. We have a very interesting photo that surfaced from Quartex management involving Alex Newhook working on faceoffs with one of the best people you could possibly work on faceoffs with. And to top it all off, Filip Eriksson, who was playing first line in the preseason, not only played first line in their first CHL game today over in Europe, but he scored in the season debut. So many huge things coming up, all on this episode of Habs Digest, and we'll start with Filip Eriksson. And look, from Patrick Bexell, who's tweeting a lot about the European Habs prospects all the time. Fantastic follow. Please go check him out. Just hold on to that position. Filip Habs prospect starts on the first line as Swedish champions takes on Zug from Switzerland in the Champions Hockey League. That's this CHL. So the SHL champs Luleå, which is Filip Eriksson's new team, went up against CHL's Zug right now that has, look, Thomas Tatar, Dominique Kubalik, and even Filip Eriksson. Habs legend Erik Gustafsson there on defense. But Jesse playing first line, scoring a goal. I mean, we saw him play first line in the preseason and scoring. Had, 5 points in 4 games. I don't know where this came from, but the fact that this just is seemingly not a fluke, like this is real, I don't know where it came from, but I absolutely love to see it.
And he's impressing us early and obviously getting a strong start to his season over in Europe, which is very important for him as he looks to maybe earn that entry-level contract. You got to feel like Kent Hughes is keeping a close eye on this as well. But it's nice because we're seeing the further toolkit of Filip Eriksson emerge right now. And one thing that's really coming out right now is he's got a great shot. Like, this guy can really rip it on the one time. But what I liked about this goal, Josh, was that he was just going to the net all the way. And notice how he has the head up, stick on the ice, Johnny on the spot all the way. Like, not just reading the play well and having the courage to go to the front of the net, but also to stay there as well and maybe get a couple whacks to put that goal in the back of the net. So showing some great awareness out on the ice. We're seeing some great development from him. Again, when you can have that shot, but then you're willing to kind of go to the front of the net and make some things happen, we know that that's where you make your bacon, you know? So we're seeing some very good signs right now from Filip Eriksson.
Yeah, crazy. Like we said, like this is where the future's starting to feel real. Like you said, their preseason, the dude was ripping one-timers. He was just scoring like crazy. Oh yeah, point per game in the preseason. What does that mean? Well, he's goal per game now. Like, I don't know, just insane that these guys that we talked about as like long shots to ever make the Habs, like long shots to ever even really make that jump to Laval just a couple of years ago, are just taking these leaps. So cool to see. Former 6th round pick making this noise. Leave some love for Filip Eriksson down below. And before we get into Vinzenz Rohrer, there's another guy we got to get into in Alex Newhook, because I think this is very interesting. But hey, before we do, just a reminder to hit subscribe to the channel, because half of you guys still aren't. We got daily Habs news from all across the world, as you can tell. And if you want to stay up to date, this is the spot to be. Let's just take a look at this picture. Now, this is taken from Reddit from user GoHabsGo31. It was originally posted by Quartex Management on Instagram. I believe it was a story, so it's no longer there. But it was Patrice Bergeron working with Alex Newhook and Will Smith on faceoffs. And look, what better guy to have working on faceoffs other than Patrice Bergeron, which is such a cool thing to see the Québécois Bergeron working with. I mean, Will Smith's cool too, but Alex Newhook there, a guy who, Jesse, I know a lot of us have talked about maybe he can play center, maybe he can't. People have sort of said, maybe let's keep him as a winger for now. Newhook, again, I feel like we sometimes forget in 23-24, 46.5% on the dot in his 55 games, 34 points in 55 games. He is capable of having a good faceoff percentage. And to see this, look, this is probably just Quartex. This is not necessarily that he's always working with Patrice Bergeron, but the fact he's going out of his way, he's making this effort. I'm sure it's not just him to take these leaps forward in what is one of the Habs' biggest weaknesses at the moment. Is really, really awesome to see.
And Kent Hughes maybe pulling some strings here with the Quartex promo session here to get Patrice Bergeron giving some great advice to Alex Newhook here, who, again, like, there is a world where maybe he's playing a little bit of wing this year, but again, like, he could be very valuable at center. I maintain on the third line as a center, this guy can have a breakthrough year coming up. I love to see it. As you mentioned, I love that he's learning from Patrice Bergeron, really one of the best, was known as a face-off specialist, especially later on in his career, had a winning percentage on the draws of 57.9 over the course of his career. But what I like about this, Josh, is that when you win the draws, it allows you to have so much more control of the game, which was a little bit of an issue last year for the Montreal Canadiens. Sore spot, again, maybe for a reason why we want to bring in that 2C here going forward, because the reason we were losing a lot of draws, we found a way to get in playoffs, but that's what led to like those 1-goal games. You can't help but kind of, you're chasing the game a little bit more in that case. Whereas when you're winning the draws, Newhook, sending it back to the D-men, it's allowing you to be aggressive much more and really carry the play. And especially when you have guys that really are so puck hungry that need the puck on their sticks to be effective and to do what they do best. Of course, we're thinking of Demidov, Lane Hutson, etc. This is what will really allow to get the best out of those players going forward. And there might be a connection. Like, if we don't get that 2C, expect to see Newhook getting some reps on that second line. They know that if they don't get a 2C, it's an issue with Dach, with Newhook, and so it makes sense that they're working on this right now. Of course, Kent Hughes has put in work. He's got a couple different options here, but he knows even if we don't get the 2C, this is the backup plan just in the meantime. But we're just maintaining the hope here that Alex Newhook is just going to completely feast this year. Now that we have a little bit more depth, it wasn't his issue. I think we were just putting him in the wrong spot a little bit too early. It's like, okay, now that we got the depth, he's going to be put in a place where he can really shine going forward. And I think that alone, Josh, can be a big impact on the Montreal Canadiens next year.
Fully agree. And we talked about him when we were talking about guys who could take that leap forward this year, maybe underrated Habs. And he's a guy a lot of our fans mentioned too. I see a lot of you guys saying it. And again, just looking at that 23-24 season, and I know this past year, too, 15 goals in 55 games too. He was on pace for a 20-goal, 50-point season, 47% on the dot. That's insane. And again, our boy Newby, the thing with him this past year, I'm not going to dwell too long on this right now, but we got to remember too, this guy was kind of the go-to guy, Jesse, when we were testing different middle six lines. We're just like, throw Alex Newhook in there, see if some speed can add some offense to this line. And the dude was just kind of bouncing around so many different lines. And if he can find a permanent home this year with a nice line, some skilled line mates, I think it could be a recipe for success. But leave your thoughts down below on Newhook working with Patrice Bergeron. Will this affect him? Maybe some other Habs too, taking some key advice. We'd love to hear from you. But the final thing today, and again, just it's all about the future right now, whether it is the team getting better at faceoffs, Filip Eriksson playing first line. We're seeing a guy in the flesh right now in Vinzenz Rohrer, a guy we've talked a lot about, Jesse. He has made huge strides in the past year or two, especially over in Switzerland with some national play. He's a little guy, he's scrappy, and he is finally over in Brossard practicing with the Habs. Of course, he signed his 3-year entry-level deal back in June, and you can see Patou Info was saying here Vinzenz Rohrer is there, his first appearance in Brossard. He's small, 5'10", 161. I think he's probably heavier than that, but look, he doesn't let anything intimidate him along the boards and in front of the net. The dude is going to make a push for the Habs roster this year, Jesse, because with him, it's either Habs roster or back to Switzerland. He can't play in Laval until much later in the year, so Laval's out of the question. But for a guy that has just taken such a big leap forward in terms of his development, a guy who everyone who watches him play, you're like, dang, this dude plays fantastic penalty kill. Remember those World Championship goals, breakaways? One of those guys that, yes, he is small, but he makes a huge impact. And I am just beyond excited to see him over here because he's going to be challenging a lot of other guys for a spot if he can find a niche.
And it's kind of surprising, given his size, 5'10", 161, needs to put on a little more weight, the impact that he has. Because even though he's smaller, kind of like Mooney, as you mentioned before, Josh, he still just finds a way to impact the game. And you got to appreciate players that just play with that amount of courage. I think really important to have in your organization. Probably a reason why we selected a little bit later in the third round there. But he's got some skill, too, I think that's underrated, like some quick hands in traffic. But the biggest thing that stands out about Vinzenz Rohrer is really his wheels, his speed, but also his work ethic.
Yes.
And, of course here, we're fans of grinders here on Habs Digest. Vinzenz Rohrer just completely fits that bill of he just finds a way to impact the game. And he's kind of a guy where the offense is a little bit sneakily there. Obviously, he kind of makes me think of a smaller Florian Xhekaj. Obviously, not that physical specimen, but he's a guy that brings a defensive element, kind of tenacious, but he's got a little bit more offensive skill than you might realize. You let this guy alone on a breakaway, 8 times out of 10, he's going to really tuck it away. He does have some skill here. We've seen some solid development from him as well. He earned an entry-level contract with the Habs recently, probably a big reason we're seeing him really practice with the team here. That was not a given. It was completely merited by hard work that he put in. And I'm very curious to see, Josh, this guy, Vinzenz Rohrer, absolutely can be a very good addition for Laval. He can really help make that team better. Now, is the story is now going to be, does he cap out at the HL level, or could he somehow work for a spot on the Habs soon? Obviously, probably fourth line is maybe kind of the ceiling, third line at very best here. But could he challenge for that? There's a lot of strong elements in his game. Just how a Florian Xhekaj, we didn't really expect playing further down the lineup for Laval. You have to expect once Vinzenz, gets over there, he'll have to do the same thing. But he has the blueprint of other players ahead of him, similar positions that, just how like Florian Xhekaj somehow knocking on the door of playing with the Montreal Canadiens this year, and actually well-deservedly. I think just in the same way, Vinzenz Rohrer, once he puts on just maybe a little bit more weight, could also surprise us as well, Josh.
Yeah, and again, like with guys like this, we've talked about it before, but if you find a way to fill a niche that the team needs you to fill, like the team has a specific hole, right? And you just fit that bill, you don't need to be the best, the most skilled player to take that spot. If you fit the flow of the team, the build of the team, it can work. And a guy like Rohrer, yes, he is a bit small, and that is always going to be a concern, especially with a Montreal team that is already very small, and adding more small players is maybe not the best idea. Like, that is going to be a bit of a concern, but if he can come in there and prove, especially in training camp, like, dang, this guy is straight up one of the best penalty killers here in training camp, and we lost a couple penalty killers last year, and Armia and Dvorak, and yeah, we can have some other guys fill in that gap, but like, you start to wonder, right? Maybe Owen Beck and Oliver Kapanen are a bit further ahead of Vinzenz Rohrer for sure, but just talking about the future, you really never know, and it's going to be beyond exciting to watch him and all these other guys come together at training camp coming up very soon. We're so excited. Leave your thoughts on Rohrer down below. I don't anticipate he makes Montreal this year, but keeping an eye on him over in Switzerland whenever he does come over to Laval, and the long-term future of him, because we got a couple of sneaky guys that can make a push. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for tuning in every single day, all off season long. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.